Our first speaker, I met Herman Cain for the first time when he launched the Tea Party movement in Nevada on April the 15th, 2009 at Sunset Park. Yeah. And have got to know him, and we've been together at different events around the country before, and he is just one of the most fantastic human beings on the face of this planet. I mean,
thank you.
Such a joyful soul. But I don't think that's a proper welcome for Herman Cain. If you'll indulge me, I want to try to do something different that I've never done before. If everyone could stand up, please. Now, Herman, we got a lot of white people in the audience, so I don't know how this is going to work, all right? But we're going to try this, all right? So here's what we're going to do. First, you stomp your foot 2 times. And then you clap once. Okay, so it's not bad for white people, right? Okay. 2 times, once. 2 times. We will rock you. All right, Mr. Herman Cain.
Thank you, Chuck. Now, that is creative. Thank you, Chuck. Next time you all do that, I want you to clap twice for Chuck. I get 1 clap, but he gets 2. Thank you all very much. I am thrilled to be here because I know that there are a lot of good conservatives in Nevada. You were behind me when I ran for president. You were behind me when I came out here for the very first Tea Party event in the nation. I'll never forget it. I tell this story all the time. We were at Sunset Park. It was cloudy that day. And the organizers were worried that it might rain on our parade. And when they introduced me, the clouds opened up and the sun came down. Y'all remember that? We weren't worried about the rain. We were there for a purpose. And that purpose is still here today. And that purpose, quite frankly, is to defeat liberalism and the loss of this nation. It's not going to happen on our watch. My first day at Godfather's Pizza in 1986, the first time I was introduced to the associates in the office, I walked into the room. In 1986, there were no cell phones, no Facebook. And when they sent out the memo announcing a new president, they didn't even have a picture on it. They knew that a new president by the name of Herman Cain was on his way to Omaha. And when I walked in the room, what do you think the reaction was? The executive vice president introduced me very briefly, although not as creatively as Chuck did. He introduced me to about 100 office support people. The first words out of my mouth were, "Good morning." The second words out of my mouth were the following: "There is no joy in easy sailing when the clouds are clear and blue, nor is there joy in doing things that anyone can do. But there is some satisfaction that's mighty sweet to take when you reach a destination you thought you'd never make." Godfathers was on its way to bankruptcy. And I was probably the only person on the planet that believed that we would not go bankrupt. The United States of America is on its way to bankruptcy. And I'm not the only one that believes we can save the United States of America. That's the good news. But you're not going to see that or hear that through the lens of the media. You know that, and I know that. But there are a lot of gullible people out there who will eventually believe all of the mud being thrown on the wall. That's where you come in. I agreed to come out here and speak so I could give you a few encouraging words so you could keep fighting the fight. Because I know, being on the radio every day, 2 hours a day, that it ain't easy to fight the conservative fight. And so my opening remarks, and then I'll take questions, are entitled Solutions to Draining the Swamp. We know most of the barriers. You see them, you hear them, you read about them every day. How many people are talking about solutions to draining the swamp? I don't have to explain to this group that President Trump is right when he says that the swamp needs draining. You and I see it every day. But I want to talk about solutions. But first, let's make sure we remember what the major barriers are. First, Congress. And it's not just two bodies that are in this political ecosystem. You got 535. And I know people like to say, but my senator is different. My representative isn't part of the swamp creatures. Right. They are all part of the swamp. Now, I respect those that go to Washington, D.C. for the first time with the right intentions, but it doesn't take long for them to figure out the swamp. We have a new senator by the name of David Perdue from Georgia in the United States Senate. He's doing a great job. He's trying to do a great job, but every time I talk to him, his opening words are, Herman, it is so frustrating because of the rules and the procedures that you learn that go on, which have been set up to not get anything done. I want to ask you a rhetorical question, and I don't want everybody to answer at once. When was the last time Washington, D.C. fixed a problem? 1776 is the right answer. You're absolutely right. Think about it. Ever since then, it's been incrementalism. Incrementalism. Why? Because of the swamp creatures. Every member of Congress has a group of donors that they want to try to satisfy. I get that. Every member of Congress has some supporters that they want to keep happy. I get that. Every member of Congress has some owed favors to other members of Congress. I get that. But every member of Congress also has some bloodsuckers that want something with their vote. And very few of them are willing to stand up on occasion and say, this is good for the American people and the United States of America. Bloodsuckers, sit down. It takes courage to lead like that. Because this is the Conservative Leadership Conference, I can't talk about the leadership that we have. I could talk about the lack thereof. So Congress is part of the swamp. And don't let your representative or your senators off the hook. Because once they get there, they get schooled into how to get things done. The House and the Senate. I must bring up a very sore subject with me. I've done it on my radio show ever since. Repeal and replace the Unaffordable Care Act. The House of Representatives gave us a good start. They sent it over to the Senate, and it wasn't good enough. And when they finally hammered something out, 3 rhinos stabbed the American people in the back. You see, the beauty of not being in political office is that I don't have to be politically correct, and I does not care. Lisa Murkowski from Alaska helped to stab us in the back. Susan Collins helped to stab us in the back. And let me tell you the one that I was surprised of, Senator John McCain stabbed America in the back. It wasn't perfect, but it would have been a good start. We had a president that said, send me something to sign. Now, I don't buy their reasons for why they voted against the Senate version. And the members of the House were ready to make some conciliations just to get something done. But the swamp doesn't care about getting things done for the American people. It's all about maintaining the political ecosystem. And that's why it's called a swamp. And Senator Mitch McConnell had the nerve to say he wished the president would stop referring to it as a swamp. That's exactly what it is. It's a political swamp. Another major barrier, the media. That's not going to change. You're absolutely right. But you have to recognize that the media, except for John Fund, I don't want to throw all of them under the bus, but John Fund has consistently supported the Constitution of the United States of America. And so have many other conservative voices. But the conservative voices are outnumbered. We know that. The liberal voices make a lot of noise, but so do empty wagons. And the thing that we have to do is to make sure that we are constructive noisemakers when we get the opportunity. And their voices are reflected on the nightly news, fake news, false news, deceptive news, internet news. There's more stuff out there to deceive the American people than there is stuff out there to tell people the truth. And as a result, we outnumber. And I say we because you're here. I'm not the only voice just because I have a microphone and a big mouth, as my friend told me. I have a microphone and a big mouth. And you know what? This big mouth is going to keep talking. And then you've got the opinion talking heads who aren't necessarily right. And their opinions are usually wrong. Allow me to give you an example. Most recently, I have absolutely nothing against the children of illegals that were either born here or came here and they had nothing to do with it. I have nothing against that group of people. And I happen to believe that in order to fix that problem, we need to divide it into two pieces. The first piece is, how do you provide a way for those that are here in that 800,000 group to stay here? That doesn't mean citizenship. It doesn't mean amnesty. It doesn't mean either one of those. You can become a resident, a permanent resident, without being given a path to the front of the line. You don't need a path to the front of the line. We need to fix the system that we have. We need to fix the system that we have. Let's not have this audience debate while I'm talking, please. You don't have to agree with me. But the reason that Chuck gave me the microphone is so I can tell you what I believe. What a novel idea. And President Trump did what some sports people would call, gave Congress a flat basketball with no air in it. He said, okay, I can't do anything unless you all pass some legislation. But, and this is what the liberal media doesn't tell you, he's saying, I'm not going to leave open-ended laws on the table that we don't enforce. That's what he is saying. If you want me to enforce the laws, you got to give me the laws you want me to enforce. Now, I tell you that because, yes, you've got to address the issue of those that are here. And when you talk to liberals, that's the first thing that's out of their mouth. They want you to share and feel the compassion. I get that. But this is a nation of laws. It's a nation of laws. And if the laws are not right, fix the laws. Someone asked me once, in fact, the driver asked me on the way over here, how do you think the country's doing? I said, under what President Trump can do without Congress, it's doing great. I said, the swamp is the problem. They've given him very few legislative things that he can sign to accelerate this nation. So the media is a problem, and we know that. And when you talk to liberals, and I know sometimes you get a chance to talk to them, sometimes you don't, here's the three things to look for so you'll know whether or not you're fighting a losing battle. It's called SIN, SIN. It's an acronym. S stands for they'll shift the subject. When you talk to them about DACA and about the laws, they shift the subject to the compassion. I saw a couple of people on TV, and they were asked flat out about it. But they didn't start out talking about the laws, and we need to fix the laws, and we need to seal up the laws. They started talking about the wonderful children that are here. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not incompassionate. But they never tell you about those that are here illegally, that are killing Americans and hurting American citizens. That's the part that they never tell you about. So they shift the subject. When you talk to Democrats about tax simplification and tax cuts, I don't call it reform. That's the language of the swamp. The swamp has been talking about tax reform since dirt. Many of you all might remember that I served on a commission back in the mid-1990s. It was 1995 and 1996. The late Jack Kemp was the chairman of this Economic Growth and Tax Reform Commission. That was 1996. In 1996, we traveled around the country and talked to citizens and business people. And we produced a report that said that we need to replace the tax code. So that's not new. And we need to replace it with a system that's fairer, flatter, simpler than what we have. Aren't you hearing those same words now? That was 21 years ago. 21 years ago that we were talking about simpler, fairer, flatter. That's why I don't use the term tax reform. That's code for we're going to keep talking about it. The president has boldly said we need bold tax cuts and bold simplification. And a lot of times people have absolutely no idea, at least a lot of people in the media, they never tell the American people what that means. The president has been real clear. Go from 7 brackets to 3. Make the top personal rate 25%. Drop the corporate rate from 35 to 15%. And already, the Democrats are shifting the subject. We can't give a tax break to the rich. Niger, I ask you, when was the last time a poor person created a job? It's their standard talking point, folks. It's one of their standard talking points, class warfare. Let's get our poor, gullible supporters to be mad at people that make money and to resent the fact that they have money. I started po before I could spell poor. And they want to talk to me about, they're going to be mad at me because I now have made some money in my career. I don't apologize one bit. But the media will mimic and parrot everything the liberals say without challenging it one iota. Let me tell you one other thing that you're going to hear a lot from the media. Trickle-down economics does not work. That's a flat-out lie. It's a lie. But the media won't ever challenge that. They won't go back and do their research. They don't want to talk about the Kennedy decade, the Reagan decade, where cutting taxes worked. They want to ignore the facts. That's the I. They want to ignore the facts because they know they can get away with it through the lens of the media, but they can't get away with it in your eyes. They ignore the facts. And as the tax cuts and simplification discussion, there ain't no debate in my mind. This is something that we need to do. But they want to call it, well, the debate is on. No, it's not. You've been debating it for 3 decades. So when you hear the word tax reform, correct them to tax simplification and tax cuts. Reform is swamp talk. And the N is for name calling. Yeah. He's a racist. He's a white supremacist. Several weeks ago, I read an article that was published in a Detroit newspaper. It was in the Detroit area. And the newspaper was the black-owned newspaper in Ben Carson's hometown. And the article called Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, HUD Secretary. They called him in the article a house Negro. So knowing that Dr. Carson, gentle man he is, was not going to come out and write about it and try to defend himself, I wrote an article. And I used my big microphone and my big mouth to talk about it. And I wrote an article that's on my website, hermancain.com, and the title of the article is, House Negroes Stand Up. Be proud. This man is a brain surgeon, has done things that other people on the planet have not been able to do, and because he happens to be conservative in his thinking, and he happens to work for Donald J. Trump, they name call him a house Negro, which is a term from the slave throwback days. And it falls into the same category. I'm not mad at y'all. I just get passionate about this crap, okay? I just want, let me make it clear, Nigel. I can't, my wife said to me sometime, Herman, you got to stop sounding like an angry black man. I am angry, and I'm black. I can't be non-passionate about ridiculous crap that is dividing this nation. But we can't let that happen, y'all. So they wrote this. I wrote my article on my website entitled House Negroes Stand Up. It got about 120,000 hits from people who wanted to read the correct defense of Ben Carson. So whenever you want to know if they're lying to you, go to my website, hermancain.com. One of the things we do is set the record straight. Ben Carson is not a house Negro. And then one of the things that they said in the article, well, what does he know about housing and urban development? He lived it. He was raised in the hood. His mama couldn't read. He rose above his circumstances to become a renowned brain surgeon. And now they want to name call to try and slow him down and bring him down, and every other black conservative in America, by trying to intimidate him. Memo to the media. You're not going to intimidate Dr. Ben Carson. You're not going to intimidate Sheriff Clark. You're not going to intimidate Nigel Ennis. You're not going to intimidate Herman Cain. Not on our watch. So when you get an opportunity to talk to a liberal, watch for those signs. They're going to shift the subject on you, and then you say, no, I wasn't talking about that. They're going to ignore the facts. No, but what about the decade, the Kennedy decade? What about the Reagan decade? Yeah. And then they're going to want a name call. Don't debate them on name calling, just tell them it's an idiotic excuse for wanting to break the Constitution and to slow down this economy. So you got Congress, part of the swamp. You got the media, a big part of the swamp. And then the third one, you have the land of the gullible. Many of you all now are aware of the famous Jonathan Gruber, who let it slip at a conference. And I'm going to quote Jonathan Gruber. I play this clip on my show almost every day. Jonathan Gruber was one of the architects of the Unaffordable Care Act. And he was at a conference, and he let it slip, and I quote, "Lack of transparency is a huge political advantage, based in part on the stupidity of the American people," end quote. He said that. Did the mainstream liberal media broadcast that to the gullible? No. They want them to remain gullible. They don't want them to know that the Unaffordable Care Act was a sham from the beginning. Shoved it down the throats of the American people. And now that it is imploding, you know what they want to do now? Single payer, which is worse than the Unaffordable Care Act. And when I try to explain to people that Medicare for all is the same as single payer, is the same as the problems we have in the VA, and it's going to lead to rationing, they're going to try and tell me, but it works in other countries. That's a lie. That's a lie. They don't report the problems that the other countries are having with socialized medicine, bureaucrats deciding whether or not a baby can die at home or a baby can die in the hospital. Charlie, remember that baby in Britain? What was his last name? What? Charlie Hart? Gard. Charlie Gard. The government wouldn't let him come to the United States for a long shot chance at a medication that the doctors here were willing to do for free. The government would not approve it because there was only about a 30% chance or less that it would work. They didn't have to pay for it. But a judge wouldn't allow the parents to bring the baby to the United States. Then, when it was too late, and the parents said, our baby's gonna die, let's take him home and let him die at home, a bureaucrat said, you can't take your baby home to die. Did you hear about that on the nightly news? No. You heard it on Fox, BBC. That's what Medicare for all, single payer, will eventually lead to. And I had a liberal call my radio show just this week, wanting to argue with me about how well it worked in other countries. And when I tried to push back and give him some facts, you know what he did? He shifted the subject. He ignored the facts. He didn't have the nerve to call me a name on the radio. Chicken. He didn't dare call me. Look, first of all, that isn't a dirty name out there I haven't been called. So get in line and add your own. As my grandfather would say, who didn't have a lot of education, I does not care. I does not care. But Jonathan Gruber actually said that. And they actually play upon all of the people that support them are not stupid. They are just ignorant of the facts. Because their elected leaders won't tell them the facts. The other day, the media wanted to make a firestorm out of a meeting between Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and the president. So Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, I saw the headline, "We have a deal and no border." The very next morning when President Trump got up, he used that Twitterverse that the Democrats would hope he stopped using, and immediately said, "We don't have a deal, and there would be no deal without a wall." Now, if he didn't have the power of the digital revolution, he wouldn't have been able to get his side of the story out there. But he was able to get his side of the story out there. So for a week, the liberal media has been going crazy over who told the truth. I believe President Trump. That's how they manipulate their supporters, by not telling them the truth and telling them a bunch of lies. Because unfortunately, too many people formulate their decisions about what's going on based upon a soundbite society. See, you all are doing something that most people don't do. You came here to learn something, because you don't formulate your opinions just based upon the sound bites. I don't, nobody in this room does, but a lot of people do. And one thing that the elected Democrat leaders have learned to do is how to try and get public support through sound bites. And they've got the liberal media right there parroting everything that they say. But because of the digital revolution, they don't have an open runway anymore. Thank God is right. Because for decades, that's why we haven't gotten tax cuts and simplification. I worked on health care in the early 1990s when they tried to pass Hillary Care, and I fought that tooth and nail. And the only reason that the Unaffordable Care Act passed, as you know, is that the Democrats all got together in the Senate, sent it over to the House, and President Obama went to the House and talked to the Democrats and said, "Don't change the bill. This is our last shot." He didn't use the word shoving it down the throats of the American people. He said, "This is our last shot." So a lot of Democrats walked the plank. They didn't change it. They voted for it, and it became the law of the land. See, the Democrats stick together even if they're wrong. And that doesn't mean that we have to stick together just because we're wrong. That just means that we've got to be flexible sometimes in order to get things done. That's all President Trump was saying. Let's bend. You got a lot of football fans in here. You know these defenses that said that near the end of the game they will bend but not break? Sometimes we got to bend without breaking. But as soon as, I'm going to throw another Republican under the bus, y'all. Soon as the Unaffordable Care Act failed because John McCain stabbed the American people in the back, look, we knew that Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski were never going to be happy with anything. We knew that. Then John McCain comes out of nowhere to be the deciding vote. Yes, he loved it. I happen to think that it was partly because he's amongst the Trump not likers. Maybe not hater. That's a very strong word. Never Trumper. Every time he did an interview, see, I have to look at this crap every day because I'm on the radio. Every time he and Lindsey Graham did an interview since January the 20th, they were always critical of something that Trump said, how he said it, what he did, and how he did it. Only one time did Lindsey Graham say something good about Trump, and it had to do with national defense. But everything else, well, the president should have posed it more in this language. The language of the swamp. And Trump did not go to Swamp Language 101. Now, here's some solutions, and then I'll take your questions. First, more conservative voices. You're one of them. Don't be shy. That's the only way we're going to get a better informed electorate. More conservative voices. And when you are able to speak up or do an interview, bring the facts. And don't allow people to cause you to shift the subject to talk about the emotional, compassionate stuff. I created some outrage earlier this week, and I said, I hope Congress does something about the 800,000 people that are here that in 6 months don't know what their future is going to be as far as staying here, and know they're not going to be yanking people out of houses and yanking people away from their families. But this is what the media wants you to believe. About 800,000 of them. I said, but I want to do something to help the 326 million people that live here who work and provide businesses and jobs. Tax simplification and tax cuts will help the 326 million people in this country. That's what I want to talk about and focus on. I'm not mad at you, man. I'm just passionate. Think about that. 326 million people are going to be helped if we get the tax plan that President Trump has put on the table. Now, of course I prefer it 999. But I'm willing to bend, but not break. Because I think President Trump's proposal is bold and it will work. And what disappoints me is that one of his own senior people is already saying, well, we may not get the 15% that he wants. Don't concede that to the Democrats. If you concede already that we may not get 15%, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are already trying to figure out how they can get it from 35% to 34%. They want to give businesses some crumbs, and they want to give the American people some crumbs, or nothing at all, or nothing at all. But we need more conservative voices. But be prepared with the facts. That's how you win these arguments. Secondly, we need more real conservatives in Congress. Now, we're not going to be able to vote out all of the rhinos, but we can get rid of some of them. We can get rid of some of them, okay? And that's where you come in as far as helping challengers. the first thing somebody wants to tell you if you are a challenge is, well, you can't win. How do you know that? Well, I know one thing for sure. If you don't try, you won't. What's your name, sir? Say it again. Omar Navarro. Omar is stepping up, and he's challenging, what's her name? What's her name? He's challenging Maxine Waters. I try not to remember her. You go, Omar. I'm sure everybody on the planet has told him he can't unseat her, but he's willing to give it a shot. And when I met Omar last night at the dinner, and he said, I'm challenging, what's her name? Maxine Waters. I said, where do I send you some money? That was the first thing I said to him. By the way, I got a card with my email address. I am going to send you some money. Because I'm here to tell you, if you don't try, you will lose. This is what a lot of people don't get. I recall when I ran for president, and I'm going to take a few questions in a minute, Chuck. I recall when I ran for president. You know how many people told me I didn't have a chance? A lot. And I led in the polls until they started paying people to lie. That's what it was. You all were behind me. I came out here. You all packed out a room. I don't remember where it was. I had a lot of support here in Nevada. And thank you very much for that support. But when my granddaughter at age 13 heard a music DJ making fun of this presidential guy, Herman Cain, on the radio, that was the last straw, folks. My wife never said drop out of the race. She never said you ought to give it up. She never said she can't take it. The third week of the media attack, that Wednesday, I called her. I was in New Hampshire. I said, how you doing, sweetheart? She said, today's been one of the best days I've had in the last 2.5 weeks. I said, why? She said, I didn't turn on the TV, the radio, or read the paper. She said that was one of the best days she's had. So I'm not going to blame it that my wife didn't want me to run or wanted me to run. No, my wife was there to support me. And I'm not blaming it on my granddaughter. But I just knew that the fourth one that they were going to pay to lie, it was just going to get worse. Because you see, here's what the media does. If they say it often enough, long enough, some people start to believe it must be true. That's what we're up against. That's why you got to fight lies with the facts. And thirdly, third solution. So the first solution, more conservative voices. You're one of them. Everybody can do something, but all of us can do more. More real conservatives in Congress. Thirdly, more community problem solvers. Omar is trying to do something at the community level. And when we had Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Katrina, Irma, who helped to save the day? Citizens. The Cajun Navy. Citizens helped save the day. Those are the community problem solvers, as Scott Rasmussen describes in his book. His book is one of the few books that I have read cover to cover in the last 10 years. I read a lot of books, but I read them fast. But I took my time in reading his because it was so good. The title of his book is Politics Has Failed. America will not. That is a powerful title. And in there, he lists 5 things that are going to save America from the bottom up. That's where we come in. We are part of those community problem solvers. We're part of those community problem solvers. And then in my second meeting at Godfathers, after spending 30 to 60 days touring restaurants and talking to everybody in the company, I closed that meeting out by saying, if you think you can't, you won't. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but think you can't, then chances are you won't, Congress. Life battles don't always go to the fastest or the swiftest or the strongest man or woman, but sooner or later the one who wins is the one who believes he or she can. I believe in the United States of America. Come on up, Chuck.
You know, one of these days, I hope you loosen up and tell us what you really feel.
I'm working on it. I'm working on it. I'm working on it.
The nice thing about running these shows is that you can make your own rules and change them. And with your indulgence, and if Mr. Cain would be so willing, I know we're at the end of his time, but would anybody like to hear a little bit more from Herman? You gotta give them what they want, right?
I'll be happy to take some questions.
Here we go.
Yes, sir.
Well,
Oh, no. He's going to be the caller owner.
Herman's interviewed me on his show before, and I just thought maybe I'd do a few interviews for him.
I love it.
Change things around a little bit. Okay, so now you mentioned it. You talked about this a little bit. But I forgot. This is great, because you were talking about Trump using Twitter and everything.
Yeah.
While you were talking, I got blocked on Twitter. My Twitter account got frozen because I called a liberal a moron.
That's what they're doing, see.
What they're doing.
They're trying to control not only the media, but they're trying to control the social media. They're trying to shut us down. You know, and, you know, if I may for a moment, you know, Berkeley is no longer a university. It is a brainwashing facility. If they won't allow conservative speakers to come on campus. I have a speaking engagement at a campus coming up in the next couple of months where it is supposed to be one of the most liberal campuses in the United States. And I accepted the invitation. I don't know what to expect. But let me tell you how God works. On the way out here, I sat next to a lady whose husband is a special forces ranger. She told him on her cell phone while we were flying, because she got the airline stuff, and she told him about, I'm going to be speaking at a university, and he offered to come along with a couple of his special forces buddies to accompany me. Ain't God good? Now, I ask you a question. When I show up on campus and I've got 4 Special Forces Rangers walking beside me, do you think there's going to be a protest?
Not for long.
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Okay, so here's my concern. I read about this or heard about it yesterday. The president has, and make no mistake, Republicans control Congress. If they wanted to, they could get 100% of what they've been promising. They've got control, and they've got a president that will sign it.
Yes.
They've blown it, as anyone who's read me knows one of my favorite sayings is, Republicans never blow an opportunity to blow an opportunity.
Yep.
And they've blown it. So now the president has had to govern. He's had to reach out to the Democrats, and he's talking to them. And even though he did say on Twitter, no, I did not say that, we're still building the wall, I heard there were people, Trump supporters, burning their Make America Great Again hat. This concerns me, because if you lose the base, if he starts to lose the base, then he's got big problems because we're so narrowly divided. So could you talk a little bit about that?
See, that's part of this soundbite mentality. I have it in his own words that I played on my radio show where he unequivocally said, we're going to build the wall. I'm not going to approve DACA legislation if I can't secure the border and build a wall. What part of I'm going to build a wall don't they understand? But this is how they manipulate people. And if you are a Trump supporter, and because you heard that soundbite that said he had abandoned that, that's what the liberal media want you to hear. That's what they want you to believe. So they want you to abandon this president. That's why, if you want to know the facts of the truth, call the White House and let a staffer explain it to you. That is simply BS. Now, he may have to bend in certain ways,
Right.
but not break to get what he wants to get done. That's a skilled negotiator. That's the art of the deal. Let them think that they have a deal when they don't have a deal.
Yeah. You just mentioned something that brings up another thing that's been in the news lately. Are we going to have to rename the White House?
Not on my watch.
There you go.
As long as Nigel and I are around, it's going to still be the White House, okay? And all of this noise about changing the names of statues and buildings is BS. And here's why. There's an element in this country that doesn't want this country to move forward. They want to drag us back in the old attitudes of history. Somebody said, and I didn't say it, if you ignore your history, you're bound to repeat it. That's what they want to do. So I don't believe in all of this nonsense, but that is shifting the subject. They don't want to talk about tax code and tax simplification. Let's shift the subject to people in our history that owned slaves. True story. When I was doing my radio show, before I ran for president, I had a guy call me one day on the show in a very raspy voice. Mr. Cain? Yes, sir. You are shameless. I had been talking about the founding fathers and how they set the bar high when they said all men are created equal. They didn't say all white. They didn't say all. They said all men. They set the bar up here, and a lot of them owned slaves. He said, you're shameless. I said, why? Here you are praising these founders who owned slaves. I said, sir, they set the bar where America could aspire to, not where America was. And that's why I respect our founders. And if you want to think that's shameless, go right ahead. But while I am moving forward in life and you are stuck in life, have a nice life.
Would you agree that the founders said that all men are created equal because women are actually superior?
I ain't gonna fall into that trap. One or two from the audience, yes.
All right. Mike?
If I can ask you a more Nevada-related question, but it parallels national, how would you characterize a Republican assemblyman who signs a no tax pledge, becomes speaker, and then pushes through the largest tax increase in Nevada history?
I would say that he reneged on a promise and he stabbed Nevadans in the back. Period. Just like John McCain. They stab you in the back when they do that.
Quick follow-up.
Yeah.
We used that quote in our campaign against him.
You did?
No, can we use that quote?
Yes.
Thank you.
He stabbed Nevadans in the back.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
What do you think Obama had against Roberts to make Roberts think the way, I'm talking about Supreme Court Roberts, vote the way he did on the Obamacare?
Roberts turned out not to be the logical constitutionalist that we thought. So I don't think Obama had anything on him. It's just that Roberts, he showed his true colors. When the Supreme Court tells the Obama administration what words to use so they can pass it, that's not the role of the Supreme Court. So they went back and changed it and called it a tax. So it would fit the Constitution. That's not the way you're supposed to govern. So I don't think Obama had anything on him. I just think Roberts showed his true colors.
We need term limits for the Supreme Court. 10 years is the most of combined.
One more.
Talking about the wall, Congress won't give President Trump the money, the Mexicans won't give President Trump the money. Do you think we could talk the president into starting up a 503B and let us pay for the wall?
I think that's an option. But here's the thing. If you look at all of the agencies in D.C., and even though Congress approves a budget, once that lump sum goes to that agency, there are ways that he can string pieces from different agencies and pay for the wall. But he's not going to tell people that. Why? Because the liberal media would be all over that. So your idea is one possibility, but the other one is there are ways to pull a little money from each of these agencies to pay for that wall. Okay? So yes. But so, you know, I think we send enough money to Washington, D.C. with all due respect. We don't need to send them any more. But there are ways for him to weave and bob in order to get that money. So I don't worry about it when people keep saying, well, who's going to pay for it? Where's it going to get the money? You know, unless you're in that blender with no top on it, you have no idea what might be going on or how he will be able to manipulate. He's learning how to manage the swamp in addition to draining the swamp. Yes. Yes.
Okay, one more. This lady actually had her hand up.
How do you get your top state chair to understand that draining the swamp means supporting people at the base running at school board levels, city council levels, instead of just the ones that are already over in DC? Because we're not going to drain the swamp if we don't.
Bug the hell out of them. But keep doing it. I know you've been doing it. Keep doing it. What did I say? We all have to do more. I'm supposed to be retired. And I'm not. We all have to do more is my message. And my final word on this whole thing is, folks, look, I'm a believer that it's not too late to turn the tide. But we're going to have to continue to work at it and work a little harder and work a little smarter so we can keep this the United States of America, because they do want to divide us. This lady has had her hand up. Well, this should be the last one. Yes, ma'am.
No.
Oh.
She is a royal pain in the neck.
Oh, okay.
If you let her ask a question, we'll never get out of here.
All right, we got to get out of here, folks. I have another appointment. Yeah, yes, yes,
The only two Latina Republicans here.
yes.
Legal.
They're legally here. Give them a round of applause, folks. It can happen. I love it. I love it. Thanks, Chuck.